Hi everyone, I'm Jared Byer from Made to Move Fitness, and this presentation is biking for health. So there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to how to bike, what type of bike to use, and how to use it effective for fitness. As kids, I'm sure most of us had bikes and tricycles and all that stuff, but nowadays things have advanced so much with just sedentary jobs. You need to be more active, so getting back to our youth. So this presentation discusses some of the important components of kind of using biking as a way to improve our health, get outside, exercise in a safe way, but make the right choices when kind of setting that stuff up. So before we start, we're going to talk here. So attention active members, for credits towards LMHF Wellness Program Part 2, you must watch the video in its entirety and comment on each video with your name. Once confirmed by LMHF, your comments and name will promptly be removed. Thank you. Okay, so everyone enjoys biking. Get outside, get some fresh air, some sun, get to see a lot more terrain than you would walking or anything like that. Get to experience different things. In Western Europe, there's a ton of great bike paths and routes to go on. Lots of wine trails and things like that. But the key is, if you're using this for health and wellness, there's some components you want to look at to address that you're using the right type of bike and how you're using the bike and different things like that. So some physical benefits of biking. Obviously, you're burning calories, right? You're having to pedal that bike. The one thing with biking, which is great, and or running or walking, is if you go out somewhere, you have to go all the way back. So basically, you're doubling that distance. If you're out 10 miles, you got to bike 10 miles back. So you really don't have, unless you call someone to pick you up, but this is a benefit to this, is that you go somewhere, you got to get yourself back. So you're burning calories, you're also building strength. Biking is great to develop your leg muscles, your arms and core are kind of using to stabilize and balance the bike, which is your balance. Endurance is obviously a big part of it because this is cardiovascular exercise. So you're improving your cardiovascular connection or coordination. Building endurance. Flexibility is increased because you're sitting upright if you use the right setup on your bike, which we'll talk about. It does improve muscle tone, especially for bikers. You can see it in their quads and their legs. You see the separation in the muscle tone. And it's obviously boosting circulation. But again, the positioning of your bike is very important. We'll get into that as we go along. But obviously there's a ton of physical benefits to biking. The mental benefits are obviously stress reduction, right? You're out biking, hopefully it's relieving a lot of your stress, you're actively moving, not thinking about your problems. So it's reducing a lot of anxiety and depression. That's a big component to just getting outside and doing something. Work it out, pedal it out. So you get this feel-good endorphin rush that runners and runners high get. You get the same thing with biking. Now this is not really competitive biking, it's not road racing, anything like that. This is just the general person looking to get out on a bike, whether you have a bike or are going to buy a bike, and a way to use it for health and wellness. And I know several people that during the summer they bike to work all the time. In the winter, obviously they don't here in Western New York. Some people do with the right type of bike, but that can be a lot more tricky. But in the summer, a lot of people like to, if they live close enough, they can bike to work. And it's a great way to, instead of sitting in a car and all that good stuff, bike to work. It increases your blood flow, mental energy is improved, so it actually helps with problem solving and thinking and development of ideas. Oxygen nutrients, your brain increases a gray matter, which actually makes you smarter. So the more you're actively using this, or activity and exercise, the better off your brain health is as well. So there's a ton of mental health benefits, not just structurally for your brain, but just getting away from your phone, or getting away from stresses that are constantly on your back. Okay, is it activity or is it exercise? Well, based on your heart rate and intensity, you can determine that. So if it's something that's a low to moderate, like just kind of biking around at a slow pace, that's activity, which is great to maintain your health. But sometimes biking is super simple. If you have a bike that has a lot of gears on it, and you're using the lowest gear, it's pretty simple to bike around. If you have a fixed gear bike, a little bit harder in the hills, or if you're just kind of tooling around. You can go at a low intensity, and it's great for activity. If you want it to be exercise, you got to go at a little bit higher intensity level, a little bit faster speed. So low to moderate speed would be a flat surface or flat heart rate. Moderate to high is going to be speed or hills. Obviously, hills on a bike are very, very challenging, especially if you don't use the gears or know how to use the gears to make it up a hill. Not too many hills here in Western New York, but lots of straightaways, lots of open areas to bike, lots of bike paths. There's a lot of things you can actually do bike-wise. There's so many these slow roll events with tons of bikes and things like that. They're not necessarily activity, they're more just community events. There's like a lot of biking clubs that go out for rides and things like that, which are a little bit safer because you're riding in a pack versus by yourself, so if you have any problems, you have other people to work with. But like other things, like walking and all this fitness stuff, there's lots of apps you can use to track your progress and performance. Now on a bike, you can get bike computers that will track your speed, distance, calories burned. You can sync it with a heart rate monitor. There's so many advanced things if you want to go to that level. Or you can just use a simple app to track, on your arm or something for GPS. There's mounts you can put your phone right on your bike if you want to track, a GPS map and things like that. So there's just amazing things that have come about with apps and fitness, and especially for biking, there are just incredible things you can do now that go a long way to really help you track what you're doing and improve over time. Okay, so like most of the aerobic activity, look at the FIT principle and how that applies to biking. So frequency is how many times per week you're going to be biking. If you're biking to work, that's a daily commute, that's fine. But if you're doing it for exercise or kind of structured activity, you can basically bike, if you're not really getting that sore, you can bike almost every day. I wouldn't recommend every day. I'd take a little time off, but it's not something that's going to create a lot of micro trauma or damage to your muscle like weight training or something. So it's typically the intensity level is much less, unless you're like, riding hills and racing and things like that. Then it's much different. But for the average person, it's just frequency can be every day if you wanted. Take a little bit of time off. You're not doing anything significantly difficult. So again, it's based on intensity. So your heart rate, if you're doing something real extreme, your heart rate's going to be high. Average, just tooling around, maybe it's going to be low to moderate. The duration or time you want to be biking, again, just like walking and things like that, and any type of exercise, I always recommend the 5 to 10 minute warm-up. So you don't want to jump on your bike and just race off. Get on your bike, get comfortable, ride it out a bit, and then basically get into so you start off with your warm-up phase, 5 to 10 minutes, then you go through your exercise bout phase, and then a cool down period. So same as what I've talked about with walking and things like that, you never want to just stop. You don't want to go to a point where your heart rate's up and then you just get off your bike and sit down. You slowly want to bring your heart rate down. Just like you would in a gym or something like that, with a treadmill or a bike, you gradually want to bring yourself down. They all have a cool down button on them. You don't have that on an outside bike, so just gradually bring it down. Don't just get off the bike and sit down. Very important. The type of activity is aerobic activity, right? So you're doing something that's long distance endurance. Even if it's only 20 minutes, that's distance. You can cover a pretty decent amount of ground in 20 minutes on a bike. So you can go pretty far. Enjoyment and variety. Again, there's mental benefits to mixing things up and going different places. Obviously, if it's a commute to work, you can maybe go a different route each day, see different things. But it's nice to get out and get away from technology and life. So biking is great for that. Okay, so let's look at your personal goals. What do you want to use biking for? Okay, so number one, it's pretty easy to get your 10,000 steps of activity on a bike. It goes pretty quick, pretty simple to do, and it's low impact. Actually less impact than walking. One of the negative things is you don't have the heel strike when biking. While walking you do, which actually helps stimulate bone density. So biking is a little bit different on that. Obviously you're able to get outdoors, you feel healthier, you look healthier, you're losing weight biking. Because biking you can actually get quite a bit more you can actually burn more calories biking than you can walking. So it's actually a bit better for weight loss because you're actively having to, push harder and force the pedals. And there's different ways we'll talk that you can actually do that. But performance-wise as well, I mean, if you're a biker and it's improving your heart, strengthening your heart, you look better, you feel better, everything works well. So let's look at your personal goals and what you want to attain with this. Okay, so the way to choose the right bike. This is very, very important because a lot of people, they'll just go on any bike and go for a ride. And the most common thing I think I see here in Western New York is a lot of people ride mountain bikes, like everywhere. The mountain bike trend started a couple decades ago, and just everyone owns a mountain bike. Mountain bikes are actually designed to go downhill on the off-road. They're not really designed for pavement and bike paths and things like that. They have real knobby tires and a lot of grip, so they're not really good for actually using them on a bike path or fitness. They're tougher to ride, so you get a little more resistance, but the wheels themselves, or the tires, are real knobby and real aggressive gripping. So we'll talk about a couple different types of bikes and how what kind of bike you want to choose. So number one, like a cruiser bike, like a big cruiser bike, is usually designed for like the road or a bike path. So they're typically like a single speed bike. They're a little bit bigger bikes, look like old fashioned style bikes. You're not going to get much performance. They're typically a heavier frame bike. They're good for exercise because they're heavy, so and there's no gears with them typically, so they're good for that. The hybrid bike is the one we're going to talk about most, and that's the one I recommend most for fitness or health purposes. The main thing with those bikes is you're actually sitting upright on the bike, kind of like a cruiser. They typically are going to have gears to them, so you can do some hills and things like that, but it's more an upright position. And that's a key thing that we're going to talk about today. So when it comes to road bikes, they're more for speed, pavement, not bike paths. They have real skinny tires, easy to get a flat tire on those, but you're in a down position. So that down position can be tough on your neck, shoulders. It's hard to ride let's call it a 10-speed or racer bike upright. They're not really comfortable. They're meant to be in a down aerodynamic position. So if you're into road biking, I mean, that's great, but that's going to be a higher level of performance. Not really for the average person for fitness, I would not recommend a 10-speed or any type of like road bike. Mountain bikes, like I said, are for off-road. You can ride them on bike paths and whatnot. You can get different tires for them, but they're really designed, because of their handlebars, really designed to be over your handlebars and controlling yourself as you're going downhill. So they're not really meant for flat surfaces. And actually, by being in that position, a lot of times you might get some neck and shoulder issues, some wrist issues. Whereas a hybrid bike is more upright. You can usually rotate the handlebars up to be in a position, so almost like you're standing up. So it's a bit better just alignment-wise and ergonomically. E-bikes, like these electric bikes, are really big now. They're kind of like the modern-day moped, where you can pedal the bike regular, or you can just use this. Some are electric, some are gas, these motors. So it's not as much, obviously, if you're using the motors, really limited, other than balance, limited fitness component to it. But they're good if you go real far out somewhere and get too tired. You can turn the little motor on and use that to come back. And then obviously BMX bikes, single speed bikes, not really comfortable bikes for distance. Those are more for tricks and competition. So a little bit different design for that. But again, there's different bikes for different purposes. So let's look at ergonomics. So this is where a good bike shop comes in. If you go to like Target or Walmart or something to buy a bike, unless you know how to size a bike and adjust a bike, you're probably not going to get the right bike. So ergonomics are really important, and someone at a good bike shop is going to measure you up and figure out what bike frame and how to set the handlebars, the seat, everything in the right position, because those are keys to the long-term, comfortable biking. Is the frame size correct? If you look on most frames, it's going to give you the size of frame and what height, as your height, you should have. So small, medium, large, extra large, whatever frame that is. So just using someone else's bike, if you're the same size, that's fine, but it's got to be sized, the frame has to be sized based on your height. Your seat height is probably one of the other big things I see all the time when we see people biking. Their seats are way too low. Their knees are super bent. They're never extending their legs. That creates a lot of stress on your knees over time, and you don't have as much force when you do that. What happens is a lot of people, when they go to get on a bike, they go to sit on the seat and both their feet are flat on the ground, which actually on most bikes is not correct. You should actually not, you should be on your tippy toes to hold the bike up. You should actually be elevated up. So most bikes, when you're on the seat, you can't just put both feet down. You have to lean the bike down to get off it. So you have to be a little bit more aware of that when you're getting on and off the bike, because your seat height should actually be a bit higher. Now again, on a hybrid, that's what we're looking at, is your seat height is the right height, so your handlebars can rotate up. So it's just like you're standing and you're pedaling. So actually almost like standing on the bike on the seat. So your handlebar height and angle is really important, and make sure the bike is adjustable for that. Some of the newer bikes, the frames actually go up at an angle, so actually the handlebars are already up, and so the old style bikes where the bar was actually straight across. So the manufacturing and design of all these bikes has changed a ton over the years, and hybrids, like I say, are one of the best ones to look at. Cages or cleats, that has made a big difference. I used to just use regular bike with pedals, and actually got into biking shoes with clips, so you actually clip in. A little more tricky because you don't just necessarily snap at them unless you twist them to come off. So when you're coming to a stop, you have to be more careful. But way different, because what happens with the biking shoes is that if you don't have them on, just have regular pedals, you're only pushing down, right? You're only pushing forward. But with cleats, what you're actually doing is you're pulling up on the backstroke. So when you're coming back up over the top of the crank as you're pedaling, you're actually pulling with your hamstring. So it's really, really strong if you're trying to ride hills and things like that, using both ends of your stroke of your pedal. But again, they're a little tricky because you got to twist to get them out. If you go to lean over, you got to snap your foot out quick to catch yourself. Cages are similar to this. This little cage that goes over the top of your shoe. You tighten it down. You can kind of pull up on that. You don't have as much leverage that way because they tend to loosen up over time. And again, with that, you have to slip your foot out quick if you have to stop. So it's a little, I prefer the cleats a lot better than the cages. The cages seem to be a little more, tricky in case you get hung up in them. Make sure you have lights, reflectors, mirrors, a phone mount. A lot of bikes now come with a phone mount. Just kind of strap your phone to it. Obviously, you can use that for apps and GPS as well. But making sure you have all those components is really important. So this is a hybrid style bike. This one has a flat frame, but again, the handlebars will rotate up. So it's an upright position, adjustable handlebars where they rotate. Finding the right size or frame size is very, very important because that's going to dictate the height of the frame and your height of your pedals versus your seat. Adjusting the seat height, again, most people have the seats way too low. They have them set so they can have their feet flat on the ground. And if you have them right, you should have to lean your bike in order to get it like that. So when you're pedaling around, you should have your knees slightly bent at the bottom. So it shouldn't be totally locked and straight. It should be slightly bent at the bottom. So you can feel that pedal and have to reach for the pedals as you go around. Okay, so tire types. Again, this does relate back to the different styles of bikes, but some people actually can mix up the different tires. So like a real thin, skinny tire like on a road bike, again, they're super high pressure, but they can also puncture really easily, and you better be good at fixing flat tires if you ride one, because anything on a road will typically pop them. I haven't had the best luck with that. Medium-sized tire is going to be like a hybrid. And typically they have tread on them, but not the aggressive tread that like a mountain bike would. There's also obviously cruiser tires, which are fatter, and then there's a real fat tire bikes. Those bikes are fun to ride. You can ride them in the snow and mud and things like that, but they are very heavy. Those tires pick up a lot of weight, so that's a pretty good bike for fitness as well. Just don't expect to go a long distance on a fat tire bike. They came out a couple years ago and they're pretty popular right now. They have real fat forks on them. They look like an off-road bike, and that's kind of what they're designed for. But you can ride them in the winter. because they have a wider contact with the ground. But the other thing too, when it comes to tire types, always check your pressure before riding. If you have low pressure in your tires, it's going to make it a lot worse riding, and you might actually start bending the spokes and the actual rims themselves. So always keep that pressure up, always check them before riding. Most all tires always have a small little area where they're leaking, so always make sure you get that. And determine, do you want your tires to be smooth or do you need traction? If you're riding in the rain, you're going to need a little more traction. So that's why hybrids are great, because you can ride them off-road a bit, but also on-road. Whereas mountain bikes, they're designed to really grip the grass and the mud and things like that. Whereas a road bike, you can barely ride that off the road. They have like limited to no traction. So think about that, how you're using it and what environment you're using it in, and that will determine which type of bike and tire you want to be using. All right, so choosing the route. So obviously you have bike paths, right? They're typically paved. Some bike paths are gravel. Hybrid bikes work great in both of those. Some people ride on the sidewalk. You're really actually not supposed to ride on a sidewalk. You're supposed to obey the same rules of the road as someone in a car, as a motorized vehicle. So you're actually supposed to be riding in the road with traffic, same side as traffic. Obviously you got to be wary of cars, and a lot of cars don't give you much space. So just be aware of that. Stay as close as you can to the right as possible. Off-road, obviously you're going to have a lot of grass, mud, uneven surfaces, so just be aware of that. And that's why typically you're not really going to wear, some mountain bikers do wear cleats and things like that, but you got to be real quick with that if you have to unsnap, so you don't fall on your shoulder or something like that. I've had some clients have had some injuries just coming to a stop on a bike and falling over, so you got to be real careful of that. But again, choose a route wisely. Have the right bike for that situation. Maybe you have several bikes, maybe a mountain bike for something more extreme or off-road, and maybe just a hybrid for tooling around and the exercise end of the thing. Okay, so you can also use that bike to bike indoors, or if you have an exercise bike, you use a magnetic or spinning bike, which has a weighted wheel. But a bike trainer, you can actually take that bike, if you get a good bike, and this little trainer there, the bottom picture, has a little stand on it. So actually the little stand in the front holds the front wheel straight, and on the back there's like a little gear that spins. So those typically are magnetic or fluid. The fluid one is actually I think there's a wind one as well I use, but it was super loud. So if you have neighbors or downstairs neighbors or upstairs, that might be too loud. But basically you're kind of riding against a resistance in the gearing. So you can actually use that bike to ride, indoors in the winter. So you can actually take that bike and use it year round if you want to do that. But again, any type of biking, obviously a bicycle versus exercise bike is much different. So contraindications with biking for fitness, obviously consult with your doctor before biking. If you have any balance issues, blood pressure issues, always make sure that's taken care of. Typically bike with someone else, have your phone handy. Again, you can mount it right on your handlebars. Avoid biking on a tilted path. The edge or the berm on a road somewhat, like if you're riding and there's like a small bump there, that's an easy way to topple off a bike. So be careful of those little ridges and things. It's pretty easy for a bike to just catch and tip over. Obey the rules of the road. So stop at stop signs. There's so many cyclists, they just ride through stop signs. If it's clear, you should be all right. You can get tickets on bikes. My wife actually got one. She ran a stop sign on a bike and got a ticket for it. So that does happen. Always wear your helmet. I know sometimes they don't look the best and they're kind of goofy and sweaty, but you should always wear a helmet. I know several clients have been hit by cars or had a fall or tumbled. Helmets always save as much as you can. Always have water with you. Obviously most of these bikes have water cages. A lot of times you can get these little back cages for more water. Sometimes you have belts and backpacks with water. So have as much water as you can with you. Wear reflective, bright clothing at night, especially reflective jackets and things like that. I mean, most bikes have reflectors on them. You can get these stickers you put on your bike that are super bright and reflective. They work real well. Use a flashlight or headlamp, and there's bike lights you can put on front and back, a red one for the back just like a car, and a headlight for the front if you're going to be biking at night. But just be real careful of other cars. Obviously you could, go tumbling with anything, but just be aware of other people, is very important. And try not to bike on sidewalks. You're going to have more issues with people walking, and you're not really supposed to be there. Kids typically is not a big deal, but an adult should not be on a sidewalk with a bike. You're supposed to ride in the street unless it's too dangerous, and just make sure that you're obeying you're going the same direction as the cars. You don't want to go against the cars. Another good thing that works real well is they have these little extendable mirrors that come off the side of the bikes just so you can see over your shoulder with cars coming, because there's many times where cars do not give you much clearance or space. So just be aware of that. If you have any questions, feel free to message me, and thank you for listening.